Well, thank you, and I certainly want to first commend the gentlewoman from Minnesota. She's been a real leader in the Congress here in attempting to call attention to the great problems that we're going to face if we don't get our fiscal house in order. And she just showed an article from the Washington Times just yesterday. There was another article in the Washington Times that said the Polish currency had dropped 60% in value since last August, and the Ukrainian currency had dropped in value 43% just since last September. And those are the kinds of things that we're going to face. A few years ago, I was told that in Argentina, they got into such bad fiscal or financial shape that suddenly they had to start raising the prices in the grocery store every 4 hours. And the American people, I don't think, do not realize how tough and how difficult and how extreme our problems are going to become if we don't get our fiscal house into order. It's mind-boggling. In fact, it's incomprehensible that the Congress voted a few months ago. We voted against it, but they voted to raise our national debt to $11,315 billion. And nobody can really comprehend a figure like that, but what it really means is that it's not going to be long at all before we're not going to be able to pay all of our Social Security and veterans pensions and all of the things we've promised our own people with money that will buy anything. And people are going to face some really tough times if we're not careful. Some of our leaders are looking dreamily back at the New Deal, and our colleague from Missouri just quoted a quotation from one of Franklin Roosevelt's, for President Franklin Roosevelt's cabinet members. What we're doing now is unbelievably to me, astoundingly to me, we're almost making Franklin Roosevelt look conservative by what we're doing. And I talked about the debt that we have. Under the administration's most optimistic predictions, we're going to add $4 trillion more to our debt over the next 3 years. I'm in my 21st year in the Congress. I never believed that we would be facing the kind of deficits and debt that we're taking on and facing over these next 3 years. And so I want to commend our colleague from Missouri, Congressman Aiken, for his remarks. I heard a lot of the things he had to say, and I know that Judge Carter, our colleague from Texas, is going to speak shortly, and I'm just going to take just another minute or two. But I think this problem that's being discussed here today is so very important. We can't emphasize it enough because it overrides and affects everything else that we're talking about here in the Congress. David Walker, who's the former head of the GAO, has been going all over this country over the last few months trying to be a Paul Revere and sound the warning about what we're facing and what we're getting into. And he talks about the $11 trillion debt that we have, as mind-boggling as that is. But what is even worse, in today's, in one of the Capitol Hill newspapers today, he has a column, and he mentions, as he mentioned before, that we have over $56 trillion of unfunded future pension liabilities. Under our law, if a private company sets up a pension plan for its employees, it has to fund it, and its leaders can be put in jail if they don't fund those private pension plans. But our leaders, we've done this very thing over these last few years. It started with the Great Society because President Lyndon Johnson did not want to run up. He didn't think people would stand in the late 60s for huge deficits at that time, but what we did back then was just nothing, was minuscule compared to what we're doing today. And we talked about the New Deal a few days ago. In the Washington Times, 203 leading university economists signed a full-page ad, and they said this. They said, "We, the undersigned, do not believe that more government spending is a way to improve economic performance. More government spending by Hoover and Roosevelt did not pull the United States economy out of the Great Depression in the 1930s. More government spending did not solve Japan's lost decade in the 1990s. As such, it is a triumph of hope over experience to believe that more government spending will help the USA today." And these economists continued, as I say, 203 leading university economists, they continued and said this: "To improve the economy, policymakers should focus on reforms that remove impediments to work, saving, investment, and production, lower tax rates, and a reduction in the burden of government are the best ways of using fiscal policy to boost growth. And unfortunately, we're going in the opposite direction now, and it is a very dangerous road. We're going down a socialist path, and socialism, my colleagues, has never worked any place in this world. If it had, the Soviet Union and Cuba would have been heavens on earth. And instead, every place where we've let the government get too big and get out of control from a financial standpoint, we've ended up with a few elitists at the top, almost no middle class, and a huge starvation or underclass. That's the only thing government is good at, is wiping out the middle class. And what we've got to make more people realize is this: there's waste in the private sector. I recognize, just like there's waste in government, but the waste in the private sector pales in comparison to the waste that is in government. So every dollar that we can keep in the private sector does more to hold down prices and create jobs than does any money that's turned over to government. And that's been proven all over the country. And the best way we can help the poor and the lower income and the working people of this country is by keeping more of our money in the private sector, where it will be spent much more economically and efficiently than it will be if we turned over to the government. But I know there are others that want to speak, and I've taken up more time than I should have, but I do want to once again thank the gentlelady from Minnesota for taking out this special order and for all the good work that she does in this Congress.